Hey there, Scary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss Campbell fighting Dodo Birds of Leaky Black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Today we are continuing our conference previews for the 2023-24 college basketball season. We've already done the Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC, Big 12. If you missed them, go find them. Now we're turning our attention to the Big East, a league that UConn coach Dan Hurley has predicted will be the nation's best conference this season. Deadleg, let's start there. Do you agree with Dan Hurley? He's the coach of the reigning national champions. He's a Hurley brother. Do you agree with Dan Hurley? Do you agree?
I think we got a chance. I think he's got a chance that's accurate. And the reason why I think he's got a chance is the population of this conference. So you've got probably 4 schools that have real hopes to be Sweet 16 or better kind of teams and potentially occupy more weeks inside the AP top 25 than not. If you're in a stout Big East follower, you know the schools, but if not, well, you'll just have to wait as we run down the thing. Obviously, UConn is one of them, but also we have, the Big 12 is inflating, and the Big 12 has been the best league. GP is on record saying he thinks the SEC will be the best league in the country. We're going to do our SEC show on Friday, but the more teams that you have in a conference, the more likely, if everyone is bloated to 16 and 18 teams, then obviously water will find its level there. But the Big East, the Big 12's got 14. The SEC has 14. The Big 10 has 14 for one more year. Pac-12 obviously has 12, and the ACC has 15. The Big East has only 11 teams. So if the likes of, if Xavier doesn't fall too far off, if Providence finds its stride in year 1 under Kim English, if St. John's immediately is a factor nationally, and you even get, say, Butler or DePaul slightly improved, there is a healthy chance that the Big East could wind up being rated as the best league. Heading in, Ken Pom predicts it to be the 4th best per his algorithm, and the human poll, I believe, had Ken Pom's human poll, I think, had the Big East number 2. So based on the opinion of people that care enough to subscribe to Ken Pom and New to vote into that thing before the start of the season, they've got a decent chance. I don't think it'll be the case, but I think the Big East has an excellent chance at being a top 3 league in the country, and I don't think 2 is all that unreasonable to forecast either.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out. We'll see. But based on, the way you would gauge things in the preseason, I would bet against the Big East grading out as the best league in the country. For some context, there are 4 top 25 Ken Pom teams in the Big East heading into this season. They have 8 of their 11 in the top 60. That's good. Mm-hmm. But Butler, DePaul, Georgetown are all outside of the top 95. So 3 of the 11 are outside of the top 95. For some additional context, understand the Big 12 has 14 schools, none outside of the top 75. SEC has 14 schools, none outside of the top 85. But again, 3 of the Big East 11 are outside of the top 95 at Ken Pom. That's a problem if you're trying to grade out as the best league in the country, but it's mostly a preseason problem. We'll see what happens once we start playing games.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun year in this league. I handled the Big East preview for .com, and I just find this league to have the most abundance of good storylines and interesting teams and players to watch up and down throughout the league. I cannot wait, and the fact that you also have the reigning national champion adds even that much more juice to it. The Big East obviously got just a blast of publicity back in late March, early April, when it was able to bring on Rick Pitino, and then you had Ed Cooley switching from Providence to Georgetown, which has ignited a rivalry that might outlast the sun. I mean, it has created a new level of actual hatred, and perhaps fans are taking that a bit too seriously up in Providence. But Providence fans, you're out of your minds, and we do love you for that. And then, of course, you got Kim English taking over at Providence as well. In addition to UConn winning the title, Marquette being a really, really good team, Creighton bringing back a lot, and Nova, we'll see if it can get back. I've got my 5 storylines, GP. You ready for them?
I will be. Oh, I will be.
But first?
I got to get a word from my partner.
Yeah. There is a Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
All right, Deadleg, what are the 5 biggest storylines in the Big East heading into this season?
You know, I could have gone with 10 for this one. This was the one league.
Well, I ain't got that kind of time.
We're not doing 10. I got 5. I'm just saying I could have gone 10. All right, I could have gone 10. Number 1 is, does UConn stay in the conversation to repeat for the entire season? And how, tied to that topic, if you will, is the health of Donovan Clingan and his foot. He had a foot strain in late September and is still targeted to return in time for the season opener for the Huskies. We'll see if that's the case. Ultimately, you want to make sure that he is, and it just, there are no questions. UConn opens against Northern Arizona and Stonehill and Mississippi Valley State before it goes and plays Indiana on November 19th. If
Indiana hasn't finished in the top 25 at Kemp,
no strays for the Hoosiers on the Big East episode.
I just reminded you.
Keep it focused, or I'm going to go to 10 storylines.
Okay, I'll stay focused.
Okay, thank you. If Clingan is 97% for the Northern Arizona game, you sit him. If he's 99% for Stonehill, you sit him. Wait until he's 100%. And if that means, ramp him up against Mississippi Valley State, I guess supposedly you do that. But we'll see for UConn. And if they can remain in that conversation, they're a preseason top 10 team. AP top 25 came out after we did our Monday episode. UConn is ranked 6th, I believe, in the debut edition of the AP poll. Storyline number 2, Pitino's impact year 1 at St. John's. Will he get the Red Storm to the NCAA tournament? Listeners to the podcast in the offseason are aware of Gary Parrish's stance on this. He will repeat that stance later on in the show. I think St. John's has some pretty decent variance ahead. I think its ceiling could be as good as 4th in the league, and I think its floor could be as low as 10th. I don't think it's going to finish 10th, but it is year 1. There was a big roster turnover. St. John's historically has just not been a factor in this league and nationally, but Pitino's there, and there's going to be immense interest. We'll see if in the early going he can have Deion Sanders-like effect, even though obviously those aren't complete analog situations. Storyline number 3, Marquette has never repeated as a league champion in either the regular season or in conference tournament play. It's going to aim to do both of those this season. Tyler Kolek was the CBSSports.com pick for preseason player of the year. GP and I will give our individual selections for that at the end of the show, as we do for every conference tournament. Shaka Smart has found his absolute calling in Milwaukee and has Marquette, where it is also similar to UConn, not just a factor nationally, but a national championship contender. The Golden Eagles bring back all but one player of severe impact. They lost Omax Prosper to the NBA draft. We'll see if they can do something that's never been done before and repeat either as regular season champion or win a back-to-back conference tournament title. Storyline number 4. Let's see what's going to happen here with Villanova. Villanova in year 1 under Kyle Neptune was an afterthought. It did not go the way that anyone thought it would go. And even for the skeptics that went into last season wondering if Villanova would truly be a tournament team or not, this team went 17-17. It opened last season 2-5 and just was never able to regain its footing. Although it did get some momentum down the stretch in the regular season last year. It got blown out in the Big East tournament and then it lost at Liberty in the NIT there. So Kyle Neptune now, who had a first round pick in Cam Whitmore, he's gone. They do bring back some important pieces there, but can Nova return to being at the big boy table in this league? And then storyline number 5, I don't think Georgetown's going to be good, but I think Ed Cooley just coaching that program is big enough for that to be the 5th storyline. How will the Hoyas look under him in year 1, and how long will it take him to get Georgetown into the tournament? Will he eventually ever get Georgetown into the tournament? He obviously took the job because he thinks that's going to happen.
First off, that's the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard. Questioning whether Ed Cooley will get Georgetown to the NCAA tournament. That's the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard.
Have you seen what's happened with Georgetown lately?
Yeah, but it's Ed Cooley.
I think he can do it, but it's going to take time. So
Ed Cooley is in the NCAA tournament at Georgetown in what year? This is year 1. We both say no. Yeah. What year?
I'll say year 4.
I'll say year 2.
Year 2?
I believe in Ed Cooley. I'm sorry you don't.
I believe in him on a delayed timeline.
I believe in Ed Cooley immediately. My belief in Ed Cooley is always immediate. I think he's going to be good at Georgetown. And I hope someday, and listen, I'm not trying to tell fans how to feel. You can't do that, right? It doesn't work. Because I'm an outsider and I don't understand. That's what they'll tell you immediately, right? I hope someday they can appreciate him. I understand right now it's tough. I got it. I'm not saying he deserves a stand or will get a standing ovation this season. I just hope someday he can go back there and they can think about the good times and celebrate him. He was a wonderful coach for a wonderful basketball program. And then he simply did what most of us do in our careers, which is do what he believed in that moment was the best thing for his career and for his family. I stopped a long time ago questioning people when they change jobs. And I know that makes me in the minority among sports fans, but I don't know. I don't like the idea that he was so beloved in his hometown, and now that's not real. Not simply because I don't ever want to make this simple, but in part because he changed addresses.
But that is the case, and it's going to create a must-see environment later this season when when Georgetown goes to Providence, and that'll be in late January. Any other thoughts on the storylines? Do you want?
Well, I do believe UConn will present itself as a legitimate contender to go back to back. Obviously, I'm not predicting that, but like if we're putting together a list of 10 to 15 teams in February that could win the national championship, I would expect at this point that UConn would be on it. And to answer a question that you asked while popping through those, yes, I do believe Rick Pitino will be in the NCAA tournament in year one at St. John's. I think he is still one of the very best coaches in the sport. Obviously, one of the all-time greats. I think still operating at an extremely high level. And he doesn't have the best roster in the Big East. I don't know that he's got one of the 20, 25, even 35 best rosters in college basketball, but he's got one that's good enough, and he's great, and they'll be there.
He is great. It's going to be a big climb in year one, but if he hit it in the portal, then they've got a really good chance, and we'll tell you where we think St. John's is going to land in the Big East standings in just a moment, because we got to get to our projected 1 through 11 for the Big East.
All right, so Deadleg, the Big East got 5 schools in the NCAA tournament last season. Marquette was a 2 seed, Xavier was a 3, UConn a 4. So, yes, there were 2 Big East teams seeded better than the Big East school that won the national championship. Creighton got a 6. Providence got an 11. The Big East this season going to get fewer than 5, more than 5, exactly 5 teams in the 2024 NCAA tournament.
I'm going to say exactly 5. I think it'll match. I'll reveal
Not
that.
only do you not believe in Ed Cooley, you don't believe in the Big East.
You think having 5 out of 11 is not believing?
Yeah,
Really?
I don't think that's believing.
I think it's believing just plenty.
Oh, I think you're coming across as a non-believer.
Okay.
You strike me as a non-believer.
So you've got more. You've got what, 8?
7.
Whoo! You think 7 out of 11 Big East teams are going to the tournament? You better.
I'm sorry for believing in Ed Cooley in the Big East.
You better walk back your SEC. Is going to be the best league in the country then.
You think 7 out of 11 is better than the SC's getting 9 out of 14? I know I can just do the math on that and figure it out.
Let's do the math.
I don't want to.
GP. Do the math.
Hey, if I have to make it 10 out of 14, I will. I can do it just like that. Whatever I need to do, I
Let's
can
go
do.
11 while we're at it.
I can just do. If I want, I'll go 12 out of 14.
Okay.
I'll put South Carolina in the tournament.
Gamecocks dance in 2024. Heard it here first. You've got 7. Why don't you run down? Let's switch it up. You run down how you think this league is going to shake out in the regular season, 1 through 11.
Okay, I've got Marquette winning it, and I know UConn's higher in the computers. I just think when you return basically everybody from a team that won your league and won your league tournament, I just think that you've got to be the favorite heading into the next season. They've got the best point guard in the Big East in Tyler Kolek. They've got a tremendous scorer next to him, my little homie from Memphis, Cam Jones. I think Marquette wins the league. Back-to-back. Shaka Smart becomes your Big East Coach of the Year once again. I've got UConn 2nd, and I've got Creighton 3rd. Now, to be clear, I've got all 3 of those schools in the top 10. So Marquette, UConn, Creighton, I've got them 6th, 8th, and 9th in the top 25 and 1, all in the top 10. That's 1, 2, 3 in the Big East. Most people believe that it will be one of those 3 schools that emerges as your regular season Big East champion. After that, I do have Villanova. Like you mentioned, year one replacing Jay Wright was bumpy, to say the least, for Kyle Neptune, but he did enough this offseason to, I think, create a roster that's good enough to have a bounce back year. I've got Villanova 24th in the top 25 and 1. Obviously, I think they're going to the NCAA tournament. If you care, they're 23rd at Ken Palm. Kyle Neptune gets the Wildcats back into the NCAA tournament in year 2 at Villanova. After that, I've got St. John's 5th in the Big East, 25th in the top 25 and 1. I apologize for believing in Ed Cooley and Rick Pitino. All right. But I think Rick's in the NCAA tournament in year 1 at St. John's. After that, I got Providence in 6th. I think Kim English gets the Friars to the NCAA tournament in year 1, replacing Ed Cooley. And then 7, I've got Xavier, the 34th at Ken Palm. That projects as an NCAA tournament team. Those would be my 7 teams from the Big East that make the NCAA tournament: Marquette, UConn, Creighton, Villanova, St. John's, Providence, Xavier. I got Seton Hall, NIT bound, and then Georgetown, Butler, and DePaul. Whatever other tournaments we're doing now these days, they can play in one of those.
Yeah, you've always hated Thad Matta, haven't you?
Oh, me and Thad's rivalry goes back decades.
Yeah, I thought that was the case there. I've got.
I love Thad Matta. In fact, you ready? You ready for this? I don't even know anybody who doesn't love Thad Matta.
I know you. I've got Marquette number 1 as well. I've got Creighton 2. I've got UConn 3. Got Nova, and I'll do a quick.
My God, you don't believe in Dan Hurley or Ed Cooley?
Okay. I've got Nova 4, St. John's 5, and then I think Xavier at 6 is going to narrowly miss the tournament. I've got Providence 7. I've got Butler 8, Seton Hall 9, DePaul 10, Ed Cooley and Georgetown occupying the cellar in year 1 in the Big East. I think Oso Ighodaro is going to have a huge season for Marquette. And I do like Tyler Kolek's chances to potentially repeat, although he is not my pick to win Big East Player of the Year. I'd keep an eye on Tristan Newton at UConn, because I think Alex Caravan's going to have a nice sophomore season. I think Clingan will make a big jump, although I'm a little bit skeptical that Clingan is going to go from what he was last season to being one of the 10 most important players in the sport. I think it's possible, but I'm not convinced that, in more than half of UConn's games this season, you might see, Stephon Castle or Tristan Newton, who I think is going to be so pivotal to UConn's chances to win the league and to get a 1, 2, or 3 seed again. I've got them near. I think Creighton and UConn are about equal. Creighton yet again has an awesome starting 5. Now, they lost Ryan Nemhard, but they bring over this transfer that within the program has such lofty expectations. Stephen Ashworth, who's a really, really good perimeter shooter. He will run the floor. You'll probably have Baylor Shireman doing a little bit of the offense as well. Trey Alexander's a stud. They've got Kalkbrenner in the middle, who might be the best defensive player in the country, let alone the conference there. We'll see how he grows and develops even more this season. And then Mason Miller is a sophomore who I expect to get a lot of burn this season and really be a really good player there. I don't know if Creighton has a ton of depth. It didn't really have a lot of depth last year, GP, but that didn't seem to much matter. As long as Kalkbrenner doesn't get mono again for a second straight season, it should be a little bit better in the non-conference.
You need to focus. Hey, you need to stop worrying about Clingan's health and focus on yourself a little bit. Kalkbrenner's health.
I'm fighting through it for the listeners here. Okay.
I'm less concerned about Ryan Kalkbrenner's health than I am yours at this point.
For all I know, I have mono. Although, can you get mono again after you had it? I got mono when I was like 13.
Oh yeah, I think you can.
Yeah,
you can get mono whenever you want to.
Whenever you want.
Yeah, just got to go out and look for it.
Okay. Nova. Okay. Justin Moore is back. I think Justin Moore is your semi-dark horse pick to win Big East Player of the Year. Mark Armstrong is going to be, I think, one of the biggest jumpers in this league in terms of production year over year. So if you aren't too familiar with Armstrong, super heady player, can play the 1 or the 2. And those 2 players will, Armstrong and Justin Moore will kind of guide the way. But I think Dixon's going to be massive. And then there's a lot of hope and expectation for TJ Bamba from Washington State, and then Tyler Burton, who was nearly a 20-point game a guy at Richmond last season. And then with St. John's, they bring back Joel Soriano, and his return, I think, is huge. I think having him back gives them a viable shot at top 5 status in the league. And then Patino brought over Dennis Jenkins from Iona. Jordan Dingle out of Penn should be a pretty prominent scorer. And then Chris Ledlam from Harvard is another good scorer. They also have Simeon Wilcher, a former Carolina commit, who should be one of the 2 or 3 best freshmen in the league. But you do have guys that are a part of this roster, and they got Naheem Aline, who was on UConn last season, was a role player there. But guys from Penn and UMass and Iona and Harvard there. So let's see if they can all collectively make the big jump and really become a factor. I'm a believer. I got him 5th overall.
Kyle in the chat brings up something that I wanted to ask you about, and it's about Donovan Clingan, who I believe in, you believe in. I think we both voted him a preseason All-American, but he is a consensus preseason All-American after being a role player for obviously a great team last season. But you don't often see people who are role players in one year projected across the board as All-Americans heading into the following season. Kyle wonders in the chat if the hype has gone too far. What would you tell Kyle if you were talking to Kyle right now?
If the hype is that Clingan's going to be
is he really going to be one of the 10 best players in the country after being a role player last year?
I don't know. Like, we got to do our top 101 players, and I'm in the process of assembling my list. I haven't settled on where I'm going to have Clingan, but he's not. I don't have him in my top 8 right now. So just because it's a huge jump, and he's got good players around him. And there's the foot thing. So I'm hoping that he plays once he starts playing, it's as if he never even got injured in the preseason. But I just don't know. Now, he was a really good player who thrived last season because of how he was used. And he was something of a relief pitcher after, running Sonogo out there for 27 minutes a game. So I think that's a fair and valid question to ask, GP.
Yeah. I think, listen, I wouldn't have if I didn't think he was going to be great, I wouldn't have listed him as a preseason All-American. I'm not sure exactly where I had him. I know it wasn't first. I think it was probably 3rd. But I understand why people might wonder if the hype has swung a little too far in a certain direction, because it just take Clingan out of it. This is true. You don't normally see in college basketball somebody who averaged fewer than 7 points a game in 13 minutes per game be projected the following year to be an All-American. To be clear, there are people who are role players who then emerge as All-Americans once the season starts, and we are all watching it, but they're not normally thought of that way. So this is an unusual, not unprecedented, but certainly unique situation with Clingan, where, again, after playing 13 minutes a game and averaging fewer than 7 points last season, people now think he's going to be, in some cases, one of the top 5 to 10 players in the country. I'm not ruling it out. I understand, again, why some people might be skeptical. As always, we'll see. We're going to have a player of the year and a freshman of the year in the Big East.
Hold on.
What?
I didn't get to the rest of the teams yet.
Oh, I didn't think we cared about them.
Listen, my son might have sneezed right in my face 48 hours ago, and now I'm feeling the effects of it, but I'm going to get through every damn team on this preview.
You also, you worried about Ryan Kalkbrenner. You're the one that can't get through a podcast.
I was getting my kid ready for bed, and he had a little bit of a stuffed up situation, and putting his PJs on, and it just sneezes right in my face. Yeah. And I was like, I'm done. And lo and behold, it's just taking me out, man. Taking me out. Yeah. All right. Continue. Providence at 6. Bryce Hopkins is back. Dark horse pick for player of the year. Maybe not even a dark horse. He'll be a major factor.
There was a point last year where it looked like Bryce Hopkins was going to be the player of the year.
That's fair. And I think he's got a really good shot. I'll say this. I'm going to be proven wrong. If Bryce Hopkins is the player of the year, Providence being 6 is probably not going to be right. And Providence, you have Providence in. I don't. You will be right if Bryce Hopkins is player of the year. They also got a freshman, Garway Duel, who is going to be awesome and is a ton of fun. Devin Carter's back to help run the offense, and then Josh Oduro comes over by way of George Mason, where Kim English coached last season. Providence is good. I've got them first or second team out of the tournament there, so it's very fine margin here, but I hold myself to account. What do you want from me? I've got Xavier. We've got Providence 6. I've got Xavier 6, Providence 7. Xavier does not have Zach Fremantle, and doesn't have Jerome Hunter. Now, his injury hasn't been disclosed. Normally, when a coach doesn't disclose an injury, normally that has something to do with cardiovascular issues here. So not having them both for this season, or at least not expected to, is really what dings Xavier after losing a ton. Now, they will have Desmond Claude back, and I think he'll be one of the best sophomores in the league, but I just don't think that X is going to have enough. Sean Miller's a terrific coach, and some coach can overcome the obstacles. He can, but I'm not so certain that Xavier is going to have enough to break on through. Seton Hall at 8. They've got a good backcourt, but I don't know. There's a lot of turnover here. Kadari Richmond's back. Alamir Dawes is back. And then Dylan Adewusu comes over from St. John's. So they've got, I like that 3-court attack, but I don't know. It's hard for me to justify getting Seton Hall higher than the 7 or 8 mark. Butler, I think, because it's Thad Matta, Posh Alexander comes over from St. John's. We'll see if he can be truly impactful. They've got a UC Irvine transfer, DJ Davis, who will need to be one of the best 3-point shooters in the Big East in order to give Butler a chance. I think Butler can be the spoiler in our Big East preview. I labeled them as the most likely team to exceed expectations, and a lot of that is basically due to Thad Matta, who until his 2 most recent coaching campaigns last year and then his last one at Ohio State had never had sub 500 seasons. And so, either he's hit a new stage in his career where this is just going to be the reality, or he's going to find his groove that he had for the majority of his career, because he has one of the best winning percentages of any coach in college basketball history. And then DePaul and Georgetown. DePaul, it's DePaul at this point. I would love to see DePaul actually give us reasons to talk about them, consistently throughout a season, but they just got to prove it. Deshaun Nelson.
Didn't we have a moment a few years ago where DePaul was a thing for a minute?
I think it was one episode. Yeah.
God, that was fun.
It was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. But and I like them to finish 10th. They got Deshaun Nelson and Elijah Fisher contributing, and I think they'll do well. And then Georgetown, excuse me. I don't know. We'll just see. I talked with Ed Cooley on the record in July at Peach Jam, and he acknowledged, and he said so since on the record, and Big East Media Days next week, I'll be down there. He knows that this is going to take some time, which isn't to say that they can't, pop off an upset here or there in his first season, but to just completely, uproot a program with such great history and try and get it moving. I just think it's the biggest project in the league this season. So I picked the Hoyas and Cooley in the 11th spot in the caboose. And yeah, I even think that Ed would be understanding of that prediction.
I do. If Ed Cooley were going to be upset about something today, it would not be that you predicted them last this season. It would be that you predicted them needing 4 years to get to the NCAA tournament.
Oh, he's going to be furious. Yeah.
Oh, he's going to be up your ass.
It's over. Yeah, it's over.
Oh, it's over for you. Yeah, I think if you told Ed you were I think you're going to finish last this season, he goes, yeah, maybe. Hey, I think you're going to need 4 years before you get back to the NCAA tournament. I think he'd roll his eyes at you.
He might do more than that.
I think you'd be met with an eye roll. I think you'd be met with an eye roll from Ed Cooley. Hey, you want to talk about the player of the year and the freshman of the year? Is now the time? Don't let me skip ahead.
You want 5 more storylines?
Do you have them?
Let's go player of the year.
But first, it's a word from our partners.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
Tyler Kolek's your reigning Big East Player of the Year.
Yeah, he is.
He is back in the Big East for the team that you predict to win the Big East. You really going to make this more complicated than it needs to be?
I am. You know me. My ballot.
The reigning Big East Player of the Year is back playing for a school that you think is going to win the Big East, but somebody else is going to be the Big East Player of the Year. Let's hear it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I think Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to win Big East Player of the Year.
Oh, you're backing the other sick guy.
I am.
I know how this works.
Messages in the chat indicate you can't catch mono a second time. You are not
punishing Tyler. I bet I could.
Anyone can. You're the guy.
I bet I could. Give me one weekend. Give me one good weekend. I could catch mono twice. I need one good weekend.
Oh, man.
I see what's going on here. Punishing Tyler Kolek because he remains healthy. Siding with Ryan Kalkbrenner.
There are some who
he was
believe
once
Kolek
sick like you.
shouldn't have even won Big East Player of the Year last season. I'm not one of those people, but I think Kolek's going to have an outstanding season. He was my number 2 pick on my ballot. I think Kalkbrenner is going to be a monster this season. I think he will be the best big in the Big East. I think Creighton will push Marquette. They could wind up with the same damn record in the Big East for all I know. And because of that, I think Kalkbrenner is going to be a guy who averages 18 points, 11 boards, 2.5 blocks, and is an undeniable force. And because of that, he is going to be Big East Player of the Year. And I think he will be I think if he's not a first-team All-American, he's the first guy on the second-team All-American. So Kalkbrenner's my pick over Kolek, and then I put Clingan third. But you could, I think, for that third spot, you could go Clingan, you could go Tristan Newton, you could go Trey Alexander, you could go Baylor Shireman, you could go Justin Moore, you could obviously go Bryce Hopkins. There's a lot of guys in contention for that. And I almost went Hopkins and Moore, but I ultimately said, well, if UConn's going to be a top 3 team, and I'll buy into Clingan, I put Clingan third.
When talking about Kalkbrenner and what he might be this year, you have to always have the disclaimer, as long as he doesn't get kissing cooties.
You don't, because you can't catch it again.
I could.
I'm going off of what they said in the chat, and I'd long heard that, so I think that was the case. But if you want to roll with it, by all means.
Hey, free me up for one weekend. Free me up for one weekend. I could get mono twice. Get mono 3 times. Free me up for one weekend.
You got Tyler Kolek, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yes. What are we doing? It'd be like if I said Zach Edey's back at Purdue. I think Purdue's going to win the Big Ten.
It's not like that. There's more competition in this conference. It's not like that at all.
There's more competition in this conference than there is for Zach Edey in the nation.
Correct. Yeah.
The Big East creates more competition than the nation.
For its Player of the Year than Edey. Yeah.
No, I'm saying Zach Edey to repeat as National Player of the Year.
I understand what you're saying.
He's competing against the entire nation. It's
tougher for Kolek to repeat as Big East Player of the Year than it will be for Zach Edey to repeat as National Player of the Year. That's right.
That's a wild thing to say.
But it's true.
I don't think that's true.
I do think it's true. Market Nada, put the poll up right now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Put the poll up in the chat right now.
It can't be harder to win Big East Player of the Year than it is to win National Player of the Year.
Kolek to repeat as Big East Player of the Year, or Edey to repeat as National Player of the Year. I want to see what our YouTube viewers vote in. And before we get out of here, tell us the result. Maybe I'll be wrong.
But first, a word.
No.
I think that's a wild thing to say. That it's harder to win Big East Player of the Year than it is National Player of the Year.
Last season, it's ridiculous. You think Zach Edey's going to get worse?
How is it harder to win Big East Player of the Year when your biggest competition might go down with the kissing cooties?
Kolek is your 1. Who do you have 2 and 3? Tell me you got Kalkbrenner 2. You got Kalkbrenner 2.
I got Kalkbrenner at 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
And I've got Donovan Clingan at 3.
We got someone in the chat saying Kolek will repeat, Edey will not.
I disagree with. I think they'll both repeat. But I admit I've noticed this. I have a real blind spot for just assuming things are going to go the way they're supposed to go.
That's right.
I'm constantly like, why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He already did it. Why wouldn't he do it again?
You look up, you're like, well, that didn't happen.
And then I'm like, well, that didn't work out so well. Oscar Sheepway.
It did not. And I told you last year, but I'm not like that with Edey. I think that Edey's going to repeat. It's a different situation.
Freshman of the Year.
We got the same guy. It's the only pick heading in. So watch us be wrong. Of course. Castle, UConn. It's got to be.
I mean, he's the highest rated dude for the reigning national champs. That's got to be the guy.
Really
Except
fun
for whatever
player.
reason last year you didn't subscribe to this theory when it came to the Houston Cougars. You took the less heralded freshman last year.
I did. I was wrong.
Hey, it happens, man. It happens to the best of us.
Coach of the Year?
Shaka Smart.
Rick Pitino gets St. John's to the tournament year 1. He's not going to be Coach of the Year in the Big East. Come on now.
That is one where I'm willing to talk about.
That will happen.
That's one where I'm willing to talk about it because that's not just you overachieved relative to expectations. That is, you took a job and flipped it. You took a job and flipped it from bad to good, just like that. That is coach. That is where I make an exception for somebody finished 5th in the league. Should they really be coach of the year? If you take like what Jerome Tang did last year, that was coach of the year worthy. He didn't win his league, but he took a terrible situation and made it really good immediately. I would let's say this plays out exactly the way I projected to play out. Marquette wins the league,
which won't happen, but continue.
Marquette wins the league. St. John's finishes in the top 5 and makes the NCAA tournament comfortably. What do I do for coach of the year? That's tough. I think I would lean towards Shaka Smart, but I would be open to.
You've always hated Marquette. You're not voting Shaka Smart in that case.
I would be open to considering the coach of the 5th place, St. John's Red Storm.
Couple notes here. We got someone in the chat, Kyle, saying if Sean Miller gets Xavier to the tourney, it's not out of the question. I would agree, but you can't have Pitino in the tournament in that equation, and maybe a little bit of a tighter race at the top. Also, speaking of Xavier, Jimmy Dolan, owner of the Knicks, is apparently in our chat right now. Did mention Trey Green. He's Xavier's freshman. He's really good. I had Stephon Castle 1, Simeon Wilcher 2, Trey Green at Xavier 3. Those will probably be your 3 best freshmen in the conference there. My coach of the year is going to be Pitino because I think St. John's is going to get to the tournament. Although it would be an outrageous accomplishment for Shaka Smart. If the Johnnies are dancing, he's winning. It's as simple as that. Transfer of the year. Do you have a pick?
Transfer of the year.
I can give you some names.
I got names. I hadn't even thought about it though.
Well,
but we should, and I think you suggested this in Slack. We should probably start having a transfer.
I think it's a viable category moving forward because whereas we didn't before, we had maybe 7 transfers that mattered, 8 years ago. Now there are so many that I think identifying who we think the most impactful transfer in a conference or nationally, I think is a thing moving forward.
Can I go Stephen Ashworth? Is that a reasonable answer?
It is a reasonable answer, and
as long as we keep him away from that Kalkbrenner, he's going to need to wear a mask around that Kalkbrenner.
Marquette does not have transfers for the 2nd straight season, so we'll see if that pays off. Cam Spencer at UConn is a candidate from Rutgers. Ashworth at Creighton is a candidate. You've got Bamba and Burton. Even I don't think Hakeem Hart from Maryland will be in there, but those 2 guys, you've got the entire St. John's roster. Oduro at Providence will also be a big factor there. I'm gonna say TJ Bamba winds up being the most impactful transfer in the Big East this season. And because he is involved with Villanova, he'll have them comfortably in the single-digit seed conversation. But there's a lot of good ones in the league this season. It would be Ashworth for me if not for them having Kalkbrenner, Shireman, and Alexander doing so much already.
One last thing. Kyle in the chat asks, is Georgetown at Providence the Big East game of the year? Probably not in terms of who cares about the result of it too much outside of those fan bases, but it'll be the scene of the year. That'll be the scene of the year, right? In the regular season?
It will be. That game
You'll have nothing else in the regular season that looks like that.
Yeah,
whatever it looks like.
On Saturday, January 27th at Providence. That will almost definitely be a night game. They might need to shut off liquor sales by the under 16 of the first half.
It'll be a lot like Chris Beard going back to Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, and that was pretty hostile.
That was wild.
That was pretty big. Someone, by the way, in the chat, Jimmy Dolan, owner of the Knicks, we'd love to have you here. Thanks for opening the Sphere in Vegas. He says Jordan Dingle. He's another really good candidate there. Nada, what is the voter return right now more likely to happen? Kolek wins Big East, or is it Edey wins National Player of the Year? What do we got?
Kolek is winning this at a 70% clip.
Wow. The viewers have spoken. They side with Gary Parrish.
It's just harder to win a national.
It is. Historically, that is true.
Although in politics, it's not necessarily true. You could be a candidate who would have a better shot winning a national election than your own state election.
Yeah, those things don't seem to really be analogs, but yes.
I know, but it just popped into my head. Hey, sorry for trying to be well-rounded.
It's all right. I think that Edie's got a better chance to repeat than Kolek does in the Big East. That's just
Norlander, you can't do that.
We got some people in the chat saying they're interpreting the question incorrectly. I can't read the question, but
I was just gonna say Kolek winning is basically they're agreeing with you, Norlander.
Oh, okay.
Well, then they don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, then they absolutely know what they're talking about.
The chat's outrageous.
No, the chat. I thought that we have a smart viewership and listeners.
No, we don't.
I thought that was
that's not true at all.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. So 70-30 in favor of me, as it should be. Yes.
No, the chat has gone from. I used to respect the chat.
I don't know if you ever did.
I've never respected the chat.
You've never respected the chat.
I used to respect the chat, but that's over.
We got Dave in the chat saying that Edie is at plus 175 to repeat. That's crazy odds to win National Player of the Year back to back. That's wild. If that's true, I haven't checked on that kind of stuff, but there we go.
But like if Purdue's good, he'll have the numbers, and and then we're done.
You think Edie's going to get worse?
I don't think he's going to get worse.
And he had a historic season last season. We're really swerving back into our Big Ten preview here, but come on now. And I like Kolek a ton. Got Marquette winning the league, but I think there's just too many good players, too many good teams.
We need to find out before we go too far out on a limb here. We need to find out if Zach Edey's ever had mononucleosis. Is he at risk of suffering his first case of mononucleosis this January?
I did a deep dive on Edey last season. I have been. I do have his mother's number in my phone. I can text because
text Mama Edey. See if you can find out if he's ever had mono. If he has, we're in the clear.
I think that's the update people will be waiting on for our SEC preview.
Yes,
on Friday. It's an Edey mono background check.
Do you remember when coaches used to talk about COVID this way? They'd be like, "Yeah, my whole team's already had it. We're good." We used to have conversations like that.
Coaches privately rooting to get COVID for their team so they didn't have to worry about it. Yes.
Oh yeah. You'd be like, "Hey guys, it's October 1st. Can we go ahead and get COVID out of the way? Let's all get in a room together and sneeze on each other."
Yeah. Great.
Take your mask off and spit on each other. We've got to get this out of the way. We're tipping off early next month. That was a real thing that was happening all over the country. My version is an exaggeration, but that is the way coaches.
South Harris would have run his team.
That's what I would have done. I would have had my players in a room spitting on each other.
We did our transfer of the year, player of the year, coach of the year. That's a Big East preview, I think.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry M. F. and Teagle. Legend. Shouts to Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. More of us. Ryan Kalkbrenner, one of us.
He had mono. What do you want from me?
I mean, what are we talking about? One of us. He might be the best of us. He might be the best of us. He might be the best of us. Make sure that's reflected in the comments. We're going to talk to you again on Friday. Till then, take care.